When I start with doing an Alberta reading comprehension, the first thing that I like to do is just look at the answers, and then for each question I scan for reasonable answers. And then instead of looking for what's wrong through elimination, I don't do that. I want to look for what is the right answer. What are some two possible answers that might seem right? Why you should do this is because they say that you should just look at the questions before you read, and then if you look at the questions, you just read through it, and then you forget it when you go back to do your reading. So then if you're actually scanning for the right answers in the first time, then you're already processing deeper, and most of the time you're already closer and less likely to be thrown off by some weird reading information. So let's just try that first. And also I just included some Q&As here that I, as a student, often questioned, and then these were the answers that I got. So if you want to read through it, you can just pause it. It's pretty important, but I will demonstrate the usage of these tips as I approach these questions. So first, what I got here was B.1. It's from one of the Alberta released reading comps. There aren't many, but they did release one from 2021. And fun fact, if you want more reading comps you can find all of the Alberta reading comps that they'll ever give you, 30-1, if you search up Internet Archive English 30-1 reading comps. They have all the readings, all the questions. It's out there, but there's no answers. So just to let you know that. But for this one, it's officially released, so we do have the answers. So the details in the quotations: 100 feet of Douglas fir tree-trunked, primarily established trees. Well, okay, so first thing I want to just think about the question itself, not in relation to the reading. I'm just looking around here. Let's see. We're going to do some annotations. Quotations, details in the quotation, so that means from this little quotation here, we're going to find some details. 100 feet, okay, we're going to scan for the right answer first: endurance, diversity, history, skill. So what would you find if something were enduring and diverse, history, or skilled? Endurance, probably someone in adversity. Diversity, probably variety. History, you would probably find like its age. Skill, you would probably find some numbers. So in this detail, there's 100 feet of Douglas fir. We see there's 100 feet Douglas fir, that's a tree, so there's still no adversity, diversity, or age. Tree-trunked, there's a number. So I think primarily the answer is actually just D. And even if we just go back to line 2, it was a tree we purchased and not the house. So far in this first line, I don't see anything about history, how long it was purchased. Vertical or horizontalness, still nothing about how long it was, so it's not history. And there's no diversity because I don't see multiculturalism or anything. It's just talking about one fir. I think you might be thrown off by tree-trunked, but that's how many trunks they have, not how not how many of different things there are, so it's not diverse at all. Endurance, there's no adversity, so it's not enduring. But you don't want to think through all of that. It's not that, it's not that. You want to think through, it is this, it is this, I don't see that present, so it might be this. So from lines 1 to 16, the poet reinforces the concept of change through the words change. Reading the question is super important. It says the poet reinforces a concept through the words. Okay, so we know it's going to be talking about diction. So we want to find diction that suggests change. So if there's something is changing, if you look at this one here, something is changing, that means it's shifting from one state to the other. Okay, so that's really important because, let's see, growing masts, sailing tree, beautifully composed, recomposed each season, window, painting, August, Christmas. So then straight away, I think it's probably this or this because they have shifts in them, because you got recomposed, and here you got like kind of an idea of change. But then if you're stuck between two really close answers like this, here's how you can analyze your answer's implications. Is the answer, if something is changing, or if something is between August and Christmas, rather, let's just say, if something is changing, what would I find if something was changing? Shift, right? Maybe metamorphosis. So I'm the right answer is B here, because you have composed and then you're recomposed each season. There's change there, because if something is composed and then it's recomposed, that means it had to decay, so there's that shift, and then they have to recompose. Now it's not D, even though it might look right, because it's more like contrast here, okay? You're just saying August and Christmas. So it doesn't directly imply that you're going from August and then you waited 20 months for Christmas or something. It's more contrast, an imagery of contrast, but B has the imagery of change. The details in line 3 to 16 develop a sense of, now before we jump, we're going to see if we can do some reasoning with these questions. Lines 3 to 16 develop resourcefulness and resilience. Right now, as you read these questions, you want to establish, what might I find if something were resourceful and resilient? What might I find if something were knowledgeable and friendship? All right, because there's a lot going on here, I'm just gonna categorize positive, 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 negative. Okay, 3 to 16, that's a lot. So also one thing is, you see, I haven't even started reading the entire passage yet before I answered the two questions. Now the thing is, here's the other thing. Should you do a question before reading the context, you want to be flexible. Some questions you can, but some questions you want to pick out the reasonable choices and then check the context. The context is really important, because sometimes you read a quote and you think, oh, this is what it means, but when it's in context, it might have a different tone to it. For example, it might actually be a sarcastic meaning. So then what ends up happening is sometimes you might just dash through all of the questions without reading the actual passage, but that's not what you want to do. You want to do these questions, and then eventually some questions like this one, lines 3 to 16, just forces you to read the passage. You want to make sure that even though there might be questions not asking you to read the entire passage, or there might be, in the end, you want to make sure that you kind of read the most part of the sections of the passage, okay? So if you just do all the questions without reading the passage, you're probably going way off. But right now I'm doing the passage and then I'm doing the questions and then checking the majority of the passage as the questions ask me to do. So you really want to be flexible with this, but do make sure that you read the most part of the passage. Okay, so there's a lot of words here, so I'm just gonna start. I think friendship and loss might be easy to look for. Let's see if there's anything about friendship and loss. Okay, so I see there's comfort and raccoons could sit, so that kind of sounds like friendship. Keep reading. There's some social stuff here, so maybe friendship. Any child would want, so that's relationship, so that's friendship probably, because friendship talks about relationships and that's what we're looking for in here. So that's all we got for friendship. For loss, I don't say loss because it's not breaking down, okay? So it might be B. Now, it might be B, so I'll dash that. Now, could it be A or C? Now, if something were resilient, then it would have to gone through adversity and then recover from adversity. And if there is wonder, it might be an awe and admiration. So these are the elements that we want to look for. If if we are curious if this is the right answer. Just wonder, you want to expand on what wonder might mean, and then you want to expand on what resilience might mean and what you might find if something were resilient. 3 to 16. Okay. Now, we're looking for if there is adversity and admiration. Even though that it says proportion, balance, unity, it sounds like some really good virtues, but nevertheless in this poem it is not praising that, so that won't be a part of admiration. So we still got, okay. It is beautifully composed, but it's not admiring, it's just, well, it's kind of admiring, but we'll just keep that. There's no adversity, so it's not resilience. So if you want to ask if this is admiration, if something is admired, then you might find, if something is admired, what might you find? Perhaps like a flock of fans? Or like everyone crowding and flocking to it, but right now it's not saying that they necessarily want it. So then for this part, I think friendship looks pretty good, but we have to see if there is knowledge too, right? Unfortunately, there is not knowledge, because if something were knowledgeable, then you would find some probably scientific facts about the tree. So I'm afraid it can't be knowledge. Well, let's just not say it can't be knowledge, but we're going to take a look at it might be satisfaction or resourcefulness. So if something is satisfied, then it might be very pleased, pleasing, and just generally congenial. If something is resourceful, you're probably having a task and you're doing really well at it. Then let's see if there's any of those elements in here. Pleasing, okay. Well, from what we underlined, it looks like it's really pleasing. There's comfort, raccoons are sitting, beautiful. So that is very probable. And could it be doing well at a task? Resourcefulness. It definitely has elements of resourcefulness, because you're recomposing it instead of decaying. And then this tree is being really useful to butterflies and trees and child and raccoons. So it may be A or C. But since we found more wonder than resilience, there is resourcefulness, but there wasn't resilience. So then we're going to look at B. As we said, there wasn't knowledge, wasn't present, there's no facts in it, it's not acknowledged. And we found wonder and a lot of satisfaction, because first of all, the wonder is any child wants it. The satisfaction is in that it's creating a lot of a positive community sense, right? If something is satisfying, you know that it's just really helpful and has a really positive connotation, in that it helps you feel more fulfilled. So then if butterflies are flocking to it and children wants it, that's definitely satisfied. Now wonder, there's some painting in it, so it's definitely pretty amazing. Wonder might be you admire it, and since I guess raccoons wants to go to it and butterflies do, it's probably, the answer is C. Now, this will be the last one we do for this video. Context suggests that the allusion to the writing on the walls implies A. Now, I know this sounds really obvious, but it's actually super important. Questions give you the clues to the answers, especially in reading comps. They don't just ask you the questions. They give you some keywords in the question, how it's phrased, so that you can find what you want to find. So, first of all, if it says context, you better read the context. You have to read the context. Please do. Because it's probably super important. You don't want to do a question that says context and not read the context, okay? The allusion, so it's referring to something, so that's definitely important to the context. And there's writing on the walls. We'll check. So now what could this be? It's here. This is the allusion. White writing on suspected walls, allusion, feast, foretold doom. Foretold doom. So if something is foretelling doom, okay, so it's definitely a negative connotation. Let's just check in case it's sarcastic. The wind, gale force, gale means a strong wind, roared through the jagged opening and scrawled, very negative connotation, splinters, shards, glass, thrust, very negative, done your worst, yeah. So it's definitely not sarcastic, it is about doom and negative connotations. Mischievous prank. In pranks there are jokes, and I do not believe this is a prank because there's no joke in here. You just thrust it and there is no positive light to it. Moment of recognition, threatening proclamation, sense of accomplishment. This is positive, so we're looking for negative things, so this is negative. This has a positive for the pranker. Proclamation, it says foretold a doom, so that's proclaiming something. And threatening, doom is threatening, so 14 is C. And I hope this video helped you. I do believe that these tips are super important, so check it out.